Hi, and welcome back to DPAF podcast format. And I wanted to do a podcast today about these recent sort of midterm or local council elections in Great Britain that have been dominating the news. And a lot of people have been contacting me saying, David, the results of these elections show that Labour's going extinct. And I totally disagree with that. I feel like the Labour philosophy is thriving under the leadership of Boris Johnson. I mean, there is really no one that can, look at you with a straight face or look you in the eye and say, the Labour philosophy of big government socialism, endless welfare and endless government debt is not alive and well in Great Britain. And rather than Labour going extinct, the real problem is that the Conservative Party has actually gone extinct. It's conservatism is not on the ballot anywhere, whereas Britain has become a one-party state. It's Conservatives in name only, and it's really Labour that, dominates British politics. It may not be the Labour Party, but it's the Labour philosophy, it's socialism. And Margaret Thatcher way back had a saying that the problem with socialism is that sooner or later you run out of other people's money. And there's no way that if Margaret Thatcher came back now and the Conservative Party were all sitting around the table smiling, saying, yeah, we've added 400 billion of new debt last year, we're adding another 400 billion of new debt this year, and on and on and on until total and complete destruction of the currency and national bankruptcy. And there's nothing about the Conservative Party that is conservative. I did a video about a year ago saying exactly that, and it's just as true then as it is now. I also did another video saying that Labour despise working people, and I feel like I probably went a little soft on them in that video. But of course the Labour Party, the reason they haven't succeeded in these recent elections partly is because they totally despise working people, but also from the point of view of left-leaning voters, why vote for the promise of socialism with the Labour Party when you can have the real thing with today's Conservative in name only party led by Boris Johnson and Rishi. And let's not forget that it was only a mere 18 months ago where the Financial Times was running daily articles about how we couldn't afford Corbyn in the build-up to the 2019 general election. Corbyn was promising to increase Britain's debt by 100 billion a year, and all the political classes said we couldn't afford that. We couldn't afford 100 billion a year of new debt. We couldn't afford Corbyn, and so you had no choice but to vote Conservative. But of course, if we couldn't afford Corbyn, how on earth can we afford Boris Johnson? Boris Johnson's adding 400 billion a year of new debt to Great Britain. So, if we couldn't afford Corbyn at 100 billion, how can we afford Boris Johnson at 400 billion? And people say, well, David, Boris Johnson's been dealt a tough hand. No one could have foreseen the lockdown, apart from Bill Gates. And of course, it doesn't matter the hand you're dealt, it doesn't affect affordability. I mean, if I can't afford one Ferrari in good times, how can I afford 4 Ferraris in bad times? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And of course, all the political classes, now that Boris Johnson is spending 400 billion a year more than we bring in, they don't have anything to say about it. They don't have anything to say, wow, we really could have done with Corbyn now. It wasn't anywhere near as bad as we told the people he was. But, and I'm no fan of Corbyn, but let's just look at the big picture here. Corbyn actually did win the 2019 general election because all his policies have now been implemented, even more than he can imagine. I bet he wakes up every morning ecstatic about the state of the country, about the amount of debt that we have, way more than he could have ever envisioned, way more government spending than he could have ever envisioned, way more reduction in freedom and individual liberty than he could have envisioned. Another point on the Labour Party, as happy as they are, I'm sure, that all their policies are being enacted by the Conservative Party. If the party apparatus itself wanted to do well, all they needed to do was firstly get on the side of Brexit. They knew the Conservative Party didn't want to have anything to do with Brexit, and if they were truly on the side of working people, which they're not, they could have been on the side of Brexit. They could have been accusing the Conservatives of endless delays under Theresa May, that they were never going to follow that March 29th deadline, and they were going to have endless excuses for not meeting it. So Labour failed in that regard. And then, of course, in the last year, they've totally failed on being the party of anti-lockdown. They could have easily been the party of anti-lockdown, supported all the working people that are losing their jobs, losing their livelihoods, losing their life savings, losing their quality of living, for an indefinite period. But instead of being on the side of anti-lockdown, they were on the side of even more pro-lockdown than the Conservatives, and that is saying something. So a lot of nonsense involving the political commentariat. British people are being given incorrect information all the time about the state of affairs, and the Labour Party only really have themselves to blame for the situation they're in. So I think that is a sort of an apt summary of the elections. It is totally misrepresented. We still like to have this pretense of a sort of a two-party system when really it's one-party government. And I think from Keir Starmer's point of view, if he wants to, find a solution to these results, simply just to call up Boris Johnson and ask to merge parties officially. I mean, let's end the pretense of a two-party system. If Labour's only going to provide token opposition or no opposition, let's just merge. Let's have Keir Starmer joining the cabinet. Let's have some of these Labour frontbenchers joining the Conservative and name-only party. And let's just end the pantomime once and for all. Let's have a one-party system, and then that can allow other genuine opposition parties, such as a real Conservative party, to emerge to challenge the current government. And Richard Tice, who is the head of the Reform Party, formerly the Brexit Party, these people have a huge opportunity to step up, as do some of these other groups, the Liam Fox stuff and the Jonathan Sumpton stuff. And, there really needs to be much more aggressive action in British politics on civil liberties, number one, and on debt, number two. It used to be that the Conservatives were the sort of defenders of civil liberties and defenders of the integrity of the pound and balanced budgets. Those days are long, long gone. No one in the Conservative Party ever talks about civil liberties. I mean, they say, I think, that, Steve Baker is like the most conservative person in the Conservative Party. He had the crocodile tears whenever he votes for a new lockdown law in Parliament. And then the respected Graham Brady, I don't know who is respected by, but that's what it's called. And it took him 6 months to notice that British civil liberties were being totally and completely eviscerated by the lockdown one in 2020. So my summary, therefore, is that the results are probably predictable. A lot of British people are happy that they have been paid to sit at home and not work. But of course, what's the opposite of being paid to sit at home and not work? It's going to work and not being paid. And when does that time kick off? All debt has to be paid, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens to the socialist Conservative Party when they run out of your money, when they run out of everyone's money, and be interesting to see how popular they are at the polls when that happens. So I hope you like this podcast and it provides some food for thought. Please subscribe to the channel, and we'll talk to you soon.